the fluid around the muscle allows the muscle to contract harder because it's like leverage for the muscle. Anytime you get more pumped, you get super strong. That's why right after a competition, when guys eat like maniacs and they retain like 40 pounds of water, in a day or two, which is not healthy, by the way. And then they go to the gym, they feel super strong, which is dangerous because you can tear a muscle because the muscles are way stronger than they should be.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Is it okay to drink a large amount of coffee if you don't see any side effects from it? I take around 550 to 600 mg of caffeine from coffee and still see no side effects in my body. Is it safe to take in the long run? So I guess it's not even like a bodybuilding related question, more of a caffeine intake question.
I don't even know how much caffeine I used to consume back in the day. I mean, seriously, when I would go to California, like Venice, before competitions, when I was starving, I was drinking like 4, 5, 6 cups of coffee a day. Who the heck knows how much caffeine I was getting? Now, granted, there weren't energy drinks and there weren't pre-workouts, so I probably wasn't getting as much caffeine as some of you guys get today. But what happens is you become immune to the central nervous system stimulating effects of the coffee. So you don't even get stimulated anymore from the coffee. But what happens is as you keep taking more and more and more, it can raise blood pressure, okay? And that's what you don't want in your body. So you got to keep an eye on your blood pressure because it constricts the vessels. So while you're not stimulated and you don't feel like your heart's not beating faster because you're used to it, you might actually have some high blood pressure from it if you're taking in too much. So check your blood pressure. Get a cuff like this. They're like $10, $15, auto-inflate. And I buy mine on TeamU, but you can get them on Amazon too. And check your blood pressure throughout the day. If it's normal, then you're good. If it's not normal and it's getting very high because you take insulin, you're going to have to cut back your caffeine. To be honest with you, I find that if, my little experiments I do on myself, the less caffeine you take in on a daily basis, when you do use it, it works really well, like almost too well. I was telling the After Hours crew, I bought some kombucha. I didn't know it had black tea in it because they kind of don't list it on the ingredient list. It was kind of listed further down. And I was drinking it at night one night, and I couldn't sleep. I was like crawling and going crazy about it. I didn't know what was going on because it has caffeine in it. It kept me up. So the less you use, when you do use it, it's more potent. So try not to overdo it.
By what mechanism of action does steroids actually increase strength? Anadrol seems to do so quickly. So I was curious about what is occurring to do so.
There's a couple of theories on the way it works, but a lot of it has to do with leverage in the muscle. So, anadrol causes a lot of fluid retention too. So the fluid around the muscle kind of acts as like a hydraulic lift, and it gives the muscle I guess the fluid around the muscle allows the muscle to contract harder because it's like leverage for the muscle. Anytime you get more pumped, you get super strong. That's why right after a competition, when guys eat like maniacs and they retain like 40 pounds of water, in a day or two, which is not healthy, by the way. And then they go to the gym, they feel super strong, which is dangerous because you can tear a muscle because the muscles are way stronger than they should be. So that's one of the effects. Anabolic steroids in general will increase strength. And I don't know if anyone really knows the exact mechanism. I'm sure there's an active myosin increasing of contractility element to it that I can't elucidate very well because I don't know the mechanism behind it. I'm sure I could figure it out if I wanted to, but it's probably it's a moot point. It makes the muscles contract harder. Clenbuterol does the same thing, by the way. Clenbuterol is not an anabolic steroid, but it's an asthma medication. But if you ever take clenbuterol and you get cramps, it's because it's making the muscle contract harder. And most people notice they're a lot stronger when they're on the clenbuterol. So anabolics and clenbuterol do the same thing. But the reason why the drugs that make you retain a lot of water, D-bol, Anadrol, and one of the reasons they work very quickly, but they also, it's because of the fluid retention aspect. Testosterone too. You could take, that's why when you take Primabol and Winstrol, you get a little stronger, but not that much stronger because you're not holding as much fluid. And I think it's the fluid retention aspect of these anabolics that work better. That's also why you can take a lot of anabolics pre-contest, but you're on low carbs and you're not retaining any fluid and you lose strength. Okay, does it right? You're always stronger when you're eating a lot of food. You're not as strong when you're not eating a lot of food and you're depleted because of the fluid retention aspect of it.
I know you mentioned your hematocrit tends to get really high. I also have issues with it as high as 60 to 61. Are you concerned with tanking your iron stores from frequent blood donations to lower the hematocrit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a concern. You have to keep an eye on that. That means that, because what he's explaining is that when you lose red blood cells, because let's say you're dumping blood or donating blood, you're losing the iron that's inside the red blood cells. Whereas normally, if you don't dump blood, when your red blood cells die, your body recycles the iron and uses it. Now, women lose iron every month, right? Because they menstruate. When they're losing that blood, they're losing the iron as well. But the foods that we eat do have iron in it, red meat and stuff like that, and green leafy vegetables. So you are getting iron in your diet, even if you're not taking an iron supplement. And I usually recommend that men do not take an iron supplement because iron overload, too much iron, is not good either because your body stores it in the liver and the heart and the kidneys and can damage those organs. So the key is to get blood work every, 6 months or so and just see if your iron and ferritin levels are normal, and your red blood cells are normal or a little high, then you obviously have enough iron. If you all of a sudden, for some reason, I don't know if it was after one of my surgeries, might have been after the heart surgery, I was low. Like my red blood cells, I was a little anemic almost looking. I didn't feel it, but I saw it on blood work. And it turned out my iron was a little low. And I'm like, in the history of my life, I've never had low iron, and I did it. And if you're going to use iron, by the way, you want to get heme iron, Heme. Heme iron is the best, most absorbable. You can get it on Amazon. Doesn't matter what brand you use. I use Life Extension, but heme iron, and you do it for like a month. That's it. You just take it for a month if you're a man, and that's it. And that will usually restore iron reserves, and then you're good. Very rarely do I see people who are bodybuilders low in iron as men because we do eat a lot of food, and all the foods we eat have iron in it, unless you're a vegetarian, which most bodybuilders are not. So keep an eye on it. It's great to test your levels. Usually what you'll see is that the problem is that you're low because you're not eating enough of the right foods. But like I said, very rarely do I see people get low from giving blood once a month or once every 2 months.
Is there a reason why people use 4 IUs GH in the morning versus 2 IUs in the morning and 2 IUs 6 hours later or before bed?
Some people like to take a lot of shots every day. I think that's the right answer. Look, if you're taking 4 IUs, you can take it all in the morning. You really don't need to split it up. Some people like to split it up. They feel better. I've done it both ways. I don't know if there's any difference, to be honest with you. I think you're less insulin resistant when you take it one time a day. I think when you take it twice a day, you have the potential to have more insulin resistance because the GH is in your system more throughout the day. Whereas in the morning, if you take it, you get a bigger IGF surge early in the day when you're the most catabolic, and then it wanes off as the GH kind of leaves your blood, and you lose that insulin resistance from the GH. I always felt that worked better, the bigger surge. Now, if you're taking 10 IUs of GH, which I don't recommend, you would want to split that up because your body wouldn't be able to respond to 10 IUs in one shot. In other words, your liver would not produce that much more IGF than it would produce if you were taking 4 IUs. So you'd be wasting it essentially. So in that sense, you'd want to split it up. But if you're taking 4 IUs, you can probably do it in one shot.
Recently, there have been a lot of products like pre-workouts that contain glycerol. Your opinion on this, and I guess what role does glycerol play, say, in a pre-workout?
Okay. I've used glycerol. Glycerol's been around since the 90s. Bill Phillips was recommending glycerol for pumps back then, and they didn't even have pre-workouts then. What glycerol does is when it enters the blood, first of all, they haven't really defined it, but it's it's really a component of fat. When you talk about a fat molecule, you talk about the 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol molecule. So every fat molecule is made up of 3 fatty acids and a glycerol molecule. So glycerol is technically a component of fat, but it kind of can act like a little bit of a carb. So back in the 90s, what they used to do is put glycerol into like protein bars, and they wouldn't list it as a carb or a fat. So you thought you were eating this like carb-free bar, and you didn't even know you didn't even have to list the calories from it. So it was a little deceptive, the marketing. But what glycerol does is it seems to, when it goes into the bloodstream, it pulls fluid with it. So it gives the bloodstream a volumizing effect. So you get a better pump when you're on glycerol because of that, because you got more volume in your bloodstream. Now, sometimes that can raise blood pressure, sometimes not. Depends on the person. The problem with glycerol is once your body metabolizes or gets rid of it, breaks it down in the system, all the water that it pulled into the bloodstream now goes out of the water and can go under your skin. So a lot of guys used to try to carb up on glycerol or use it the last day of a show to fill, to make themselves a little bit more pumped on stage. And then what would happen? It would get metabolized in the middle of the show, and then all of a sudden they would start spilling, and it would look terrible. So I always recommend it to people not to experiment with glycerol for a show. But if you're going to use it right before you go to the gym, you'll probably get a good pump on it. It tastes kind of nasty, though. It has like a terrible taste. I know they have a powderized version of it that doesn't make it too bad. It has almost like a nauseatingly sweet taste in a way, but it does volumize. I had a liquid creatine product, probably even before your time, Sid. It was called Crealize, the original Crealize. It was in a bottle. Jimmy the Bull's uncle made it for me because he had a manufacturing facility, and it was their patent. And it was liquid creatine in a glycerol base, and that stuff gave you an insane pump. But, like I said, it works. I would use it off season, and I would use it in the gym, but don't use it to carb up. Don't use it pre-contest, like to try to fill out and do it for a show. You're looking to risk, screwing yourself up.